Why Jax Teller killed Clay Morrow in Sons of Anarchy Season 6, when it could have happened sooner. Sons of Anarchy is full of shocking moments and some tragic deaths, though many of them had to happen, such as Clay's, but he could have died a lot sooner. Sons of Anarchy took viewers to the fictional town of Charming, California, to meet the Tidal Motorcycle Club, led by President Clay Morrow and Jax Teller, the club's VP. Sons of Anarchy follows the many ups and downs of Sancro, along with the personal problems of its leaders, mostly Jax, who was often torn between what was best for the club and honoring his father's legacy. Jax's father, John J.T. Teller, and Opie's father, Piney, were the founders of the club, with Clay being one of the original members. J.T. was killed in a motorcycle accident when Jax was very young, and so Clay became Sancro's president. Years later, Jax started to see Clay's true colors and learned about some of his biggest crimes, which he did behind the club's back, including his involvement in J.T.'s death. Clay was killed in Sons of Anarchy Season 6, but it could have happened a lot sooner if it hadn't been for another character. Clay led Sancro for years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was a good leader, or, at least, not during his entire run as president. Throughout Sons of Anarchy, Clay often made important decisions behind the club's back, and many of them for his own benefit. Clay was also very manipulative and took advantage of the loyalty of some of the club's members, mostly Tig. It was Clay who ordered the hit on Opie in Season 1, which resulted in the accidental death of Opie's wife, Donna, as Tig didn't see that they had switched places. That was only the beginning of Clay's many questionable decisions and crimes in Sons of Anarchy, but the reveal of his involvement in J.T.'s death was a turning point for Jax. A series of letters by J.T. revealed to Jax that he feared Clay and Gemma were plotting against him, but Gemma conveniently destroyed the letters that directly implicated her. Jax, moved not just by personal revenge, but also by the club's rules, knew that Clay had to die, and Clay later gave him more reasons to be killed. It was initially believed that Piney had been killed by another gang, but Clay ended up confessing to the murder in Sons of Anarchy Season 5. In an effort to cover his tracks, Clay murdered Piney, as he knew about the letters and that he gave them to Jax's wife, Tara. It was initially believed that Piney had been killed by another gang, but Clay ended up confessing to the murder in Sons of Anarchy Season 5. Per the club's rules, Clay should have met Mr. Mayhem as he had killed a fellow member without consulting with the club, but when it was time to vote, Bobby stepped in to save him. Clay's deal with the Nomads was also enough to get him killed, but Jax didn't have enough proof, and Bobby knew that. Bobby also knew that Jax would kill Clay behind the club's back, which would be a huge mistake for him, so he came up with a plan. Bobby convinced Clay to confess his deal with the Nomads to the club, in exchange for voting against his death. As a unanimous vote is needed when deciding if a club member will meet Mr. Mayhem, Bobby saved Clay and Jax, but Clay was still excommunicated from the club. Even though Clay was already kicked out, Jax didn't miss the chance to beat him, and Clay's patches and tattoos were later removed, per the club's rules. Before that, however, Clay made a deal with Galen O'Shea, a leading member of the True IRA, as he was planning to start his own crew to run the guns Sancro wouldn't. Clay's plans came across a big obstacle when he was framed for the murder of Damon Pope and taken to prison, but Galen arranged for his escape and traveled to Belfast so he could build his own crew. Jax revealed to Clay that the club had taken another vote, this time unanimously, on how to handle Clay's betrayal and their issues with the True IRA. What Clay wasn't counting on was Jax and the club helping out with the attack on his transport truck to free him, and he was definitely not counting on Jax's plan for him and the Irish. Jax revealed to Clay that the club had taken another vote, this time unanimously, on how to handle Clay's betrayal and their issues with the True IRA. After everything Clay had done, including trying to kill Tara and his business with the Irish to mess with Sancro, the club finally accepted it was the right time for Clay to die, as they had to ensure the club's safety and future. Of course, as the main goal in killing Clay was to ensure the club's future and safety, his death was part of a bigger plan. Clay's betrayal and actions weren't Sancro's only problem at the moment, as they also had issues with the true IRA, and Clay wasn't making that any easier. The club's first vote was on how to deal with the Irish, and they agreed to kill Galen and his men to force the Irish kings into dealing their weapons with August marks, leaving them out of the deal. However, for this plan to work, they also had to kill Clay. The idea was to make it look as if Galen had gotten into an argument with someone he had a history with, and because Jax was trying to take the club out of dealing arms, Clay had to be that missing piece. Jax then shot Clay in the throat and chest, and he and the rest of the club arranged the bodies to make it look as if Clay had a fallout with Galen and company, resulting in their deaths. This way, Jax and the club got rid of two problems at once. At the end of Sons of Anarchy Season 4, Jax forced Clay to step down as president, after learning about his involvement in his father's death, Piney's murder, and the hit on Tara. As the club's VP, Jax took over Sancro's presidency, and so his reign officially began in the first episode of Season 5. However, Clay could still sit at the table and get a vote, and the only reason Jax kept him alive was because he needed him for the deal with the true IRA. As long as Clay lived, Jax wouldn't have been able to fully take over Sancro, and as shown in Clay's final episodes, he wasn't going to go down without a fight. With Clay dead, Jax could finally take full control of Sancro, though that doesn't mean he was a better president than Clay. Both Clay and Jax failed as leaders of Sancro, and just like Clay left a big mess for Jax, Jax did the same to Chibs. Clay's death in Sons of Anarchy was necessary, but so was Jax's not long after.